Okay, welcome back. Thank you, staff, for getting our video back operating. When we left, we were still considering a motion that Deputy Mayor Fryer brought forward to remove the transit technician from the proposed budget for 2023. But before we go further, I've had a request from the CAO to do two things. One is to get a summary from our treasurer as to where we are financially with what motions have been dealt with thus far, and also she had a comment to make. So I'll turn to Treasurer Quinlan first.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you to members of council. So far, there's been two items that were voted on. The first being the fleet and facilities operator being removed, and that's at about $100,000. And then the bylaw officer being removed as well. So that had an impact of $55,000. So the net tax rate impact is to bring that, what we've proposed down by 0.4% or near a half. So if we looked at the option B, and we had proposed that option B at 3.86, that would bring our overall increase down to 3.5-ish. And if we were looking at option A, the 3.26 would be brought down to 2.8%.
Okay, thank you for that. And CEO Skinner.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm hearing from council that they're gathering from council's comments that there is a reluctance to add staff for the coming year. We do have some concerns with the votes that have already happened, and we will need to do some report backs to you around the level of service and what can and can't be done. But we are going to, pending the overall endorsement of this motion, make sure that your directions are carried out and carried out well. With respect to this transit position, if there was one that you found was worthwhile for this coming year, this is one that, from a staff perspective, we believe is very important. It does span between the work delivered by engineering, in that a lot of that minor capital design and tendering is done by the incumbent in the current position. It's very related to what has been the municipality's direction around active transportation and the reduction of greenhouse gases. And we very much want that on-demand implementation to be successful. This is the time when we need the person who knows how to implement that software and to drive these pieces up. If other things needed to be deferred, such as, for example, deferring the arborist position that you haven't yet discussed into 2024, for example, in order to create the space that you need to make this position go forward, it certainly would be a more palatable position from the staff perspective, knowing very much that we'll do what we need to do to drive the municipality forward pending your votes. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. So we are coming back now to our discussion around eliminating the transit coordinator position. Was there any further comments? Yes, Councillor Jeffrey.
Thank you, Mayor Hamlin. So further to the CAO's comments, is it appropriate to defer the conclusion of this matter until after we discuss the arborist position?
Well, if we're considering either or, I have to say from my own viewpoint, because I notice all of the dead trees, and I have spoken to a number of residents who are concerned about them, and to me that's a safety issue, not a staffing issue. So in my mind, I don't see them related, although I have heard from our CEO, as you have, and perhaps staff has a way to address that, so I'm happy to hear about it.
Okay. So
do we want to have yes, Councillor Doherty.
Thank you, Mayor. So it's my understanding from the motion that the final decision on the arborist is pending a follow-up report from staff. Mm-hmm. So this would be something that would be coming before the final budget. So
that, Skinner, go ahead.
In fact, we should maybe be deferring this matter as well.
Yes, go ahead.
Through the chair. So what you need to decide on early this year, of course, in your endorsement of the budget is what will be costed into this year, into the tax rate, for example. And what is in the proposal today is that there would be an arborist hired partway through, halfway through the year, but that would occur after council had received a report. But there is some funding in the budget for a part position this year, which would, pending that report, also continue into a full position in 24.
Thank you.
Can I just clarify, Mayor?
Yes,
Hamlin? So
go
what I'm
ahead.
asking is that if we're going to have a discussion here for the budget purposes, that given that comment that we discuss the arborist first as to how we're going to address it in the budget and then talk about transit after.
Okay. Councillor Houston.
Yeah, I would like to support that actually, because I have a question around the transit coordinator position and whether or not that could potentially be hired as a contractor versus full time. Because if we discuss the arborist piece and we look at option B, maintaining the status quo, from my understanding, that opens up $105,000 that can be used towards contracted services. So could that funding then be supported to hire a contractor for the transit position?
Okay. So let's just deal with that for a minute. So I'm not sure where the $105,000 comes from. Do you understand that, Treasurer Quinlan? Can you answer his question?
I do, Your Worship.
Okay,
Thank you
go
through
ahead.
you to Councillor
Yeah.
Houston. So when we look at the arborist options beyond what we've included today, what we've included is the 140,000, which is a full-time staff member beginning in May, and some additional materials and equipment. It says 130,000, but of that, we have previously included in our budgets about 80,000 to manage the contractor relationship within the tree service area. To move to that option, I think it's B under the three different options we provided. It would change the amount, and it would bring it to we could decrease the municipal impact by 105,000. Whether you use that for contracted services or move it elsewhere, that's not really what you're stipulating. It's strictly just the finances behind it.
Make sense? Okay. All right. So, Councillor Jeffrey is, I guess this is a motion you're bringing, is it?
I'm just looking at the clerk to make sure it's safe. I just want to defer it for whatever minutes it takes to discuss the arborist and then come back.
Right now at the moment, we have a motion on the floor, but the transit, coordinator technician, not sure the right technology, would kind of be switching back and forth here, to be removed from the budget. And so you're requesting that motion be held in abeyance until there's conversation on the arborist?
Okay, is that a motion?
No, if you're okay with just holding it off the
I
table
see.
right now?
Yes,
until
I am.
that conversation is complete.
Okay. Okay. All right. Councillor Ring.
I want some clarification. I'm not seeing why we need to do that. That's just my personal opinion. I don't think it's either or. It's not just for the sake of cutting jobs. We're trying the best budget we can that our citizens can afford. So I'm hearing that if we keep the arborist position, we can't afford.
Oh, no.
Why are we putting it off then? Why don't we just deal with it? And
Yeah, I think what I'm reading between the lines from what CEO Skinner said is, if you're thinking of eliminating all the staff positions we've asked for, of all of them, please keep the transit position, because we got to get on-demand going. But so I think she was begging for a trade-off here. But
that, but
yeah.
I don't know where we're deferring it until we deal with the arborist is going to make any difference on whether we either got the staff to do the job properly. At no time did I ever suggest that the transit service technician wasn't a position we didn't need. I'm just saying that I feel, but I'm not running the departments, that we could work around it where they could spend 100% of their time on that job, and the other 50% of the work that they were doing in another department can be picked up by that department. So I'm just kind of curious on why we have to refer to another item on the budget before we deal with it. We can wait. I just don't know why.
You know what? I'm actually share your view because I'm not of a mind like we should be slashing and cutting every position just for the sake of cutting positions. And I do think we have to look at each one individually because each of them are important in their own way from my reading of it and my discussion with senior staff. So why don't we finish off the discussion on the transit person? And so my question is, and I heard you, Councillor Ring, and I think everyone would be in agreement. If we, I mean, I'm guessing just what little I've heard, we all want, you know, it would be great to have a full-time transit person managing our transition. So what do we do with his half job? Really, that's the question. The half a job that would, you know, his public works, engineering, drafting, line painting, all the things that our CEO just mentioned. So we've been told so far there's nobody maybe who can do that. So now what do we do?
If I may, Your Worship,
Yes.
if I can just
Yes.
address Councillor Ring's question, and I think what we are saying with respect to that, and I'll lean on Director Slama as well, is that we don't have the capacity within Public Works to cover the 50% of what that role is doing. And I do hear what Councillor Potts has raised. But the type of work that is happening in that area is very specific. It's very heavily tied to our asset management plan as well. That position is a key portion of or a key person in the whole asset management team. Specifically, when we talk about the projects that they manage, and we look at the asphalt resurfacing is a great one. And it may sound like it's really simple to come up with what, you know, which roads and how long of a road and where these types of projects should be applied. And it's really not. It's a massive system when we look across the asset management plan. That's just one of the very, you know, finer points that, you know, is more tied to me, I would say. And I'm being a little bit centered here and saying, you know, that's a piece of that role that I can't see where there's capacity, and I don't manage public works, so I'll let Director Slama add to it. But I think what the CAO was bringing forward and was that, yes, we understand that, you know, we think that the work should be pushed back to public works in some way, but that at this point in time, we just don't see how or how we can or where we could push that extra work to. So I don't know if Director Slama wants to talk a little more about what the pieces of public works are that this current position covers and maybe the types of qualifications that are required. But I don't know if we're there yet, Director Slama, but just I'll open it up.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I am in agreement that existing staff don't have the capacity to take on further work and absorb this half a position that might be shifted from, you know, half of transit to one full-time employee. I guess it would need some reflection on if there's work that position is doing on the public works side that we're interested in not being done, right? So are there tasks that you know, in council's desire that or council would contemplate removing from the public works you know, list of jobs to allow for this to be absorbed by other people. But as I mentioned last time, I do feel that what we're looking for is someone in a role that has more than more of the skills and qualifications beyond like a lead hand position, and it does require some more technical knowledge and expertise, and you know that relates to the asset management, the role that they play in the asset management component, and providing some leadership on how we manage those road assets when they're looking and maintain them. And I spoke to the component of doing things more digitally and GIS based,
because we see some value in that. And currently, the working complement of staff is not doing that, and we don't have people to support that working complement staff to move in this direction. So it's, providing a staff member that supports the people that are doing the work on the ground. Because if they don't have that support, then there's much greater difficulty in getting that work on the ground. So does that, hopefully
you.
that provides some additional information.
Yeah, Councillor Baines?
Thank you, Your Worship. I've been impressed by the arguments I've heard in support of keeping this position. And I'm announcing I'm going to change my vote and that I will not support this motion at this point, because I don't think there's any issue that is more important to the reputations of all of us, staff and councillors, than the success of this transit file going forward. And it's an expensive, but I think unfortunately necessary, I shouldn't say unfortunately, but it is a necessary decision, and this, we will all be watching the numbers with breathless anticipation, because they've got to go up. We have got to succeed in this. And if this is the price to pay to get it to succeed, then I will oppose the motion but support the concept of this position. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments before we bring it to a vote? Okay. All those in favor of eliminating the transit position? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and those opposed? 3. So that carries.
No.
Okay. What's next? Councillor Doherty.
Just point of clarification. So, the motion that we just voted on was to eliminate the transit position, but that actually is not the intent of the motion.
It's to eliminate the transit position in the budget of 1.0 persons. It would leave a 0.5 person that we currently have as our transit person on staff.
So now I thought that the intent of the motion was to allow our half-time transit person to become a full-time transit person, and the work that he's undertaking on the other side of public works would be picked up within the existing staff complement. Is that not what we've? So we're going to
No,
implement
we're not doing
on-demand
that.
half a person.
With half a person. Yes, that's right. Yes, Deputy Mayor.
I actually believe that is what I proposed, recognizing that the 0.5 person was required. There was a lot of unknown that I thought that it was important that that person be able to fulfill some extra role of up to a person, and maybe it wouldn't take that much depending on how everything fleshed out, but it was important that whatever requirements are necessary to roll out on demand properly be met by that person, and hopefully any work that wouldn't be able to be done on the other half within the department, it could be handled within the department.
Well, I hear what you hope for, but the motion we voted on is to not add 1.0 persons to the transit position. So if you have another motion that would alter that, right now, as I understand it, I'm going to look to staff to confirm this, what our vote has done is we would be maintaining the existing complement of 0.5 persons looking after a transit system. Is that right? Yes, I'm getting a nod from the treasurer. So if we wish to have one person, as you're talking about, we do need something else. Councillor Ring, do you have a solution here?
Thank you, Mayor Hamlin. I know what we did with the vote to eliminate it off the budget, but I thought through the discussion, that doesn't mean we still can't do what we all hoped that we were able to do and move more of the work onto that person in the transit side. CAO Skinner said she didn't know for sure how much she could assign that work to them. That doesn't mean you can't assign enough that the job can't get done. I don't think anybody doesn't want to go without it, but
Well, let's ask CO. Let's ask CO Skinner to reply again, because I hear what you're saying, but I think maybe I'm not fully appreciating
I don't think
it.
we voted to keep it status quo. I thought there was enough discussion to let everybody know that don't want status quo, but we want to eliminate
Okay.
the
So I think
line
we
item
need
off the budget.
another motion to address that part of it, because I don't think we have right now. Yeah, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor Hamlin. And I don't think we do. We're actually, in doing what we've done, the consultant's report actually suggested that you study how things go and determine whether or not you need to increase from 0.5. And I do believe there's been a fair bit of discussion as to what council's hoping can happen. And I realize it's a hope, but there's many cases where we provide that kind of direction, the staff, without coming right out and putting it into a motion. So that's my position on it.
Okay, thank you. CO Skinner, I'd like you to comment again, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Hopefully I was clear. We don't have the staff to implement on-demand transit or the transit that we wish that we could to do a good job. The person who currently does the remaining work is already very busy, as are the other people in the department. I will need to come back to you to talk about what work we will not be able to get done if we are able to do the transit work. I do have to be cautious from an HR perspective about changing jobs, just from a job description perspective, and the claims of constructive dismissal, for example, if someone's job is changed extensively. While they're under an employment contract. So right now, there will be either some compromise in the level of service we're able to provide as transit evolves, or we'll find another level of service to cut to stay within the budget that where council would like to be. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Councillor Jeffrey.
Thank you, Mayor Hamlin. So just for my mollification, when we voted on changing to the on-demand service, it was made clear to us that we were going to be able to do this per the consultant's report, which meant adding the person after it was in place. We are very delayed in getting this in place. So I would like to have an understanding as to at what point we knew we needed more resources and why it would. I'm a little bit nervous now because we are committed to that on demand. And when the previous council voted on that work, we had the resources to make it happen. So what went wrong? I guess that's my question.
Who would like to answer that? You're on the hot spot.
Thank you, Your Worship, to Councillor Jeffrey. The report at the time from the consultant talked about both the implementation of the on-demand and the need for resources, not following the implementation, but as part of the implementation to be brought forward in the budget. So I'll go back and take a very close reading of that resolution because I want to, and I will report back if I'm wrong. But it was our intention that as we moved forward, both with improving the transit service and also increasing the transit service, that there'd be more than a half a resource to do so, subject to council's decision, and that's where we are today. With the first request for council to make that decision, as was telegraphed at the original approval time for the change.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. There an appetite to change the motion we've just voted on, or shall we move on? You can mull that over. Yeah. Go ahead, Director Salama.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I just wanted to add on to CAO Skinner's comments. So currently the Public Works and Transit Coordinator, their position is divided, and they dedicate 35% of their time to that transit component of the role. And the report identified that and pointed that out and recommended that that be increased to half a full-time equivalent, and then also recommended an additional half, an FTE, be added with the changes being proposed in the service delivery. And then there was the additional recommendation for possibly looking at additional complement further down the line when you look at the regional component and greater expansion of the transit position. So just wanted to provide that clarification, which I believe Treasurer Quinlan, you also identified in your report.
If I can, Your Worship, through you. So I think the actual report that came in December of 2021 specified as well that staff would consider the 1 FTE or bringing up transit to 1 FTE beginning in the 2023 budget considerations. It also included that the on-demand service would be put into place sometime in 2022. And I understand there's been a delay there, but certainly it wasn't a if or, it was a we do this and we're also going to do
So certainly the coordinator was working very hard last year on the establishing the new transit service contract, which was a big change from how we had presented the service for open tender previously. So there was a lot of time and effort work on that element along with procurement. At the same time, they did try to advance the on-demand software. The kind of the on-demand service has been proceeding in small steps. So working through the software and procuring that piece, and then working with the new transit service provider on the implementation of it. And we're still, the coordinator is still working through some finalizations with the software provider who is also looking at our data and our routes and would be providing an efficient a recommendation of efficient routes and how to implement the on-demand. So continuing to work through that. So a little bit of the workload on that person, which was greatly increased with the implementation of a new multi-year contract that includes more than one service provision, and then the just working through the elements of the steps of the on-demand.
Thank you. Councillor Baines.
Through you, Mayor Hamlin, I'm not sure whether it's CAO or Skinner or to the Treasurer. There seems to be some capacity, at least I've certainly been hearing this from council members, of what I would assume is 0.5 of an FTE for this position. Whether or not it's incorporated and added to the 0.35 of the current individual or some new incantation, would that be approximately about $60,000 or so?
I mean,
Yes, go ahead.
Your Worship, through you to Councillor Baines. I'm not 100% sure I understand your question, but currently the person that does this role, I think you...
No, we want to keep it abstract. You're right. Okay,
yeah.
sorry.
So, but I guess at this point, what we're saying is we can't hire half a body.
No, I understand that.
And difficult to contract out something that's so I guess the word is, specialized in the sense of understanding the role and understanding our roots and really being dug into Collingwood. And then again, you have to manage that outside contract. So that becomes, it's just.
I quite understand. I'm just indicating, I think, some flexibility in the part of council, and indeed what Councillor Houston said in regard to a contract position or so, that there perhaps some wiggle room here to try and come up with a solution to this. That's all I'll say. Thank you.
Yes, Councillor Houston.
Thanks, Mayor. Through you, I guess maybe to the treasurer. Just a point of clarification on the report. You had said it had stated to implementation in 2022 and then the hiring in 2023. So
Yes,
now we're
go
looking
ahead.
at implementation in 2023. So would it make sense then that we would then look at this in 2024?
I think what part of the discussion was is, and sorry if and
Go
what-
ahead. Yes, please.
What Director Slama has discussed is the on demand has been delayed, but the resource is still required. Not necessarily. I'm maybe I don't want to take words out of your mouth, Director Slama, but it's not just about pushing forward the on demand. Certainly is a large part of it, but also just the sheer volume of work split between these things. And if you look at the IBI contract or consultant contract or report back, it spoke about the things that were being, not delayed, the word's not the right word, but we're being stretched too far beyond what sort of resources we had put forward to it.
Thank you.
Yo Skinner, did you want to add something? Or you're still deciding.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just in the interests, like we all want the best for Collingwood, and we have a good transit system that I hope will get even better. There's been the proposal of a half a person, and we've had some trouble hiring for part-time people. But if council was interested in us making that attempt to have someone even transitioning in, maybe someone coming back from a leave or that has a small business that could also provide supports in this department and has the appropriate skills, and or that same amount of money for consultant support if we couldn't find the right person to hire, then I'd certainly be more comfortable with that position or half a position to support this priority than no position. Still like you to do a whole position, but I think you voted on that already. Thank you.
Well, we can vote on it again as it turns out because it's budget time. But yes, Councillor Doherty.
I'm inclined to ask if we could have a reconsideration based on the information. I think that we've just after our vote received a lot of information that clarified what we were voting on, and I will echo what Councillor Baines has already said. It is critical, and it is critical that having now made the commitment to on demand, that we have the support so that we can implement it as successfully as we possibly can. And if we are eliminating this position, I see no way clear to doing that. We're setting ourselves up for failure.
Would anyone second this? Councillor Baines.
Second motion for reconsideration.
Motion for 6. Okay, so I think, and how does this fit into, or were you going to address the CEO's comment about half a person, or are you going back to the original one person?
From what clarification we have just received, I think that we need to go back to where it was. So the motion was to eliminate one whole position. Reconsideration is to put that one whole position back in. And we've not we've not completed our discussion of this budget. There may be other items that we can consider where we can make it up in terms of a cost standpoint. But I feel very strongly that this item was put into this budget for a very good, very well rationalized reason, and I would ask council to reconsider.
And I do think the proof's in the pudding. We haven't managed to get our on-demand off the ground. Yes, Councillor Barry.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm tending to go halfway between Councillor Baines and Doherty. It is very important that the on-demand come in and run smoothly. I'm inclined to lean toward the half a person that CAO Skinner had mentioned. I don't want to totally eliminate the position, but as Councillor Baines said, it's extremely important this comes in and runs smoothly. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Councillor Jeffrey.
Thank you, Mayor Hamlin. Through to the treasurer, I'm wondering if you could quantify half a person.
If I may, Your Worship, through you to Councillor Jeffrey, I think at this point we have the whole person at 90,000, I believe. So I think if we said 45,000, that would be a safe bet.
So I think we have two motions here on the table. Okay, so we'll deal with Councillor Doherty's first. Okay, this is to not remove the one person who's the transit service technician at $91,000. All those in favor? Okay, so we had the same result. All those opposed? Okay, and now we'll have Councillor Perry's vote, which is to reduce the position from a full-time person to a 0.5 person. Did I quantify that properly? Okay. Any discussion about that? Okay. Councillor Jeffrey's going to second that. Councillor Potts.
Yes, thanks, Mayor Hamlin. I just want to Councillor Perry, if you can just clarify again. I'm just not 100% clear exactly on what your motion is, if you can clarify.
Not a full-time position. I don't know how you hire a half a person. I really don't. That's not my expertise. But I do, as Councillor Baines said, this is extremely important. The on-demand transit. I think somebody needs to devote a fair bit of time to implement it and make sure it comes in smoothly. I don't know how else to word that.
Okay, thanks.
Helpful.
Is that close? Okay.
Councillor Jeffrey.
And thank you. And just to clarify, through the CAO, this would eliminate the need to cancel or look at eliminating services because we would have capacity, correct?
CEO, go ahead.
Through you to Councillor Jeffrey, I think we could make that work, yes.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. All those in favor of Councillor Perry's motion? Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Those opposed? That would be 2. That carries. Thank you. Okay, any other? Councillor Jeffrey.
Thank you, Mayor Hamlin. So with respect to the urban forestry, I know there was some changes made within the option, and it was described as minus 84.5 in terms of the impact. But I was wondering if the treasurer could confirm for me categorically what's left in that category and how much it represents.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Councillor Jeffrey. So I'll just refer you to the budget book as well, just for additional, if you wanted to follow along. So PDF page 23, but actual hard copy page is number 20. And there it breaks down that the impact to the proposed 2023 municipal levy is $140,000. Of that $140,000, there's a full-time arborist that we've deferred to May of 2023. at 90,000. That's inclusive of benefits. And then there's materials and equipment, a total of 130,000. However, previously, we've always had about $80,000 in the budget to manage contracts with our tree service. So that's increasing it by an additional 50,000. So the 90 plus the 50 is what makes up that 140,000. And finally, we have some capital equipment of $50,000, and again, that would be funded through development charges, as it's seen as growth to the municipality in terms of a service. So that again, just to shorten it, $140,000 is the impact to the municipal levy as it stands today, as it's proposed.
You know, I've added that up to 130, but I may have done this wrong. Just check that.
90 plus 50, so that's where we get to the 140. So
I
the
see. I've got it.
130,000.
Thank you.
Yeah,
thank you.
sorry.
Okay, I got it. Thank you very much. Okay. That's right. Don't ever elect me treasurer. Yeah, go ahead, Kathy.
Thank you. So just then, as my follow-up, recognizing we're in transition with this, I think it was in one of your other alternates, but I really honestly had trouble I didn't really land on one exactly, so I guess maybe I'm trying to combine. I'm really not sure. But anyway, we're transitioning. We have the resources at this point to deal with what Mayor Hamlin has referred to as the safety issue in terms of being able to remove the dead trees in what we have already. That's already in place. That's not what we were talking about here, I don't think. We also potentially have an arborist on staff, which, and in our procedures, a union would permit the town to budget amounts for premium to pay to a person with the skill set to do some of the jobs. And then the other thing that was kind of separating it in my mind was the need to have someone who could do a plan in terms of urban forestry, which in my mind, rather than committing to a full-time position in perpetuity, would really sound like a consultant job to me, that then we could plan our staff resources around that original plan. But that's just how my mind is working now. I have no idea how to cost it, if it saves anything or not. But that's kind of my question through to the treasurer about that option. What's the
Okay.
most cost efficient?
So I took it there were three questions there. The one was, do we have she said, I assume we have the resources to remove the dead trees now. Is that correct?
So thank you, Your Worship. If I will address, and I'll lean on Director Culver as well to help sort of supplement what my answer is. So today, the way we are managing the sort of the health and safety part is that there is $80,000 in contract money to help with that. Now, the list that we've been trying to manage to has grown over the past several years. In fact, and even though those funds have been available and the funding has been spent, and it just seems to be adding on top of that. So I would say, yes, we are reactively, partially addressing those health and safety claims, but and I'll let Director Culver fill us in on the latter half of that just to supplement my answer.
Yes, Director Culver.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So I'm speaking on behalf of Director Slam and myself because we've sort of been trying to coordinate and figure out how it might be, best possible to achieve all the levels of priority, and starting with the health and safety one. So we have the ability to send crews out to deal with a tree that's crossed a path, or a limb that's fallen on a road, or things like that. And as Treasurer Quinlan mentions, that's kind of the reactive approach. We do not have or are not currently employing the expertise to do hazardous tree assessments, for example, because trees don't necessarily fall down predictably. And we need to have some expertise in hand to sort of predict and prioritize how the risks might emerge over time, and that we don't currently or are not currently employing. So yes, we have the reactive ability, and through the contract that we've implemented over the years, there is a reservoir of targeted projects, which is the 150 tree list that Treasurer Quinlan mentioned, which we have variably been able to get to, but not consistently. And some of that has to do with the moving target that is the list, and some of it has to do with the capacity of a contractor, and some of it has to do with, well, I guess that's sort of all of it. So I think what I'd like to leave, if that's enough of an explanation for you, and if it's not, please let me know, is that the Urban Forest Management Plan described a forestry unit for a reason, and that's because it was seen at the time by the community that the forest needed management. Management includes something, a wide variety of services, ranging from, limbing trees and lifting trees to give them the best the opportunity to survive in what is a harsh environment, in the urban environment, assessing trees, inventorying trees, determining species that thrive in our environment. There's a whole pile of things that the Urban Forestry Unit was sort of intended to in that Urban Forest Management Plan. The arborist is just dipping a toe in the water. And I need it to be clearly understood by council that as we go through this, however it manifests, should council approve the budget, there is a long road in front of us that it will be the evolution and development of this service if we're to achieve what the Urban Forest Management Plan indicated was necessary.
Thank you.
Hopefully that's helpful.
Any follow-up on that first part?
Just to say that maybe I misread, because I thought the hiring of the arborist was going to satisfy the thing we couldn't do internally, and that was the plan development piece. Am I correct on that?
Go ahead.
To you, Mayor. That is another piece of the puzzle that I didn't get to, which is to do with this pending consultant work that is underway right now to deal with things like the tree preservation bylaw. Any kind of arborist work related to assessment of plans for planning's sake, and also helping with enforcement. We don't have that expertise in-house currently, and it is not easy to acquire it on an as-needed basis.
Thank you. Okay, the next question was that do we have an arborist on staff, and can they be used, for example, by paying a premium to them to include this as a new work description?
So if I may, Your Worship, I'm gonna put Director Slama on the spot for that a wee bit, and then maybe we can, between Director Culver and myself, we can help answer that question. So whether there's an arborist on staff.
Thank you. Go ahead, Director Slama.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So currently, it would, I guess, to incorporate some of the forestry or arborist tasks within the existing complement, we would need to look to have some discussions with the union on that incorporation. So today, I can't say that it can be done. Because we need to have those discussions with the union and determine what that would look like with incorporating their thoughts and their desires. Yeah.
And then also, if I can just add a supplementary to that, because the next question that goes to my mind is, and what about the duties that person was filling today, right? If they become the arborist, do we need to add a position for that position, or where does that go? What was your intent? Yeah.
My intent is that it's my understanding this opportunity has been provided to us in the past, and that it is a model that has been considered and was approved by the union, but there was no money in the budget to pay the premium. So if we had money in the budget to pay the premium, it was clear that we had the resources at the time to activate an arborist under that premium scenario. May not still be the case now, but it was the case then.
And had you a thought about the position that would have to be filled if this person became the arborist?
Except to say, if we still have we had the resources to do it then, if we still have them now, I would say you pay the premium extra for the hours that person's doing, and somehow the rest gets picked up.
And can Director Slama comment on, oh, sorry, is that Executive Director Peg? I see your card. Please answer. We're lost.
Thank you, Chair. I am kind of tucked away back here and try to hold up my card high, so thank you for catching it. So, to be honest, the items that are being spoken about right now are negotiated with the union. So certainly direction from council could be taken by staff to enter negotiations with the union surrounding premiums, etc. Our collective agreement with CUPE does expire in April, so we'd be happy to table this at that time, or would be happy to begin conversations with them in advance in the form of, for example, letter of understanding. But again, any compensation, premiums, things of that nature are certainly negotiated, as Director Slama had mentioned. We could certainly, with Director Quinlan, work out, what premiums might cost, but because this would be subject of a negotiation, I would suggest advice or receiving advice from Clerk Almas in terms of if this would be most appropriate dealt with in a closed session. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, U.S. Skinner.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just to add a little bit to this, the suggestion from staff was that the position be put into place following the consulting assignment, which would be done by mid-year or so, with a report to council that could deal with these types of questions, because we did understand we heard you last time when you talked about the union positions and the potential for that, and we did know that there was some discussions that would have to take place to cost and understand whether this in fact was a good path forward, but we weren't able to have that for today, so it is part of the proposal.
Okay, thank you. And then, yes, go ahead, Councillor Potts.
Yes, thanks, Mayor Hamlin. I have a couple comments and a couple questions. The unfortunate part of this scenario is I'm going to date back probably 2016. It was a succession planning of senior management at that time that was looking towards the future. So they had brought a labor position into the union with the plan to move into more of an arborist role in the future. So that's kind of how that was facilitated and moved forward. And so that's kind of why why I've been adamant on we have the resources internally to maintain that. Before that, there was always when I say always, for a season or two, I'm going to date back probably 2012. We had an engineering student that came in to maintain our tree inventory and do tree assessments, which assisted greatly with the public works crew to go out and prioritize the emergency trees. So that aside, the question I have now is and this is through you, Mayor Hamlin, to Director Slama, what would be if a tree goes down or something happens? How is that being handled? Does Parks and Rec have the large amount of staff to accommodate that cleanup, or is it Public Works that's assisting? Who has the equipment, and how does that play out? Thank you.
Thank you. Director Slama?
Thank you. Through the chair to Councillor Potts. So currently, as Director Culver indicated, right? So currently, depending on where the tree is or the nature of it, it might be park staff that are addressing kind of emergency hazards, or it might be public works staff that are doing it. And then when we're looking at the list of trees that we have in the town to be assessed and addressed, that's what's being completed by contracted service providers currently.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and the third question was, can we get a consultant to work on the urban forestry plan, part of what this additional arborist would do?
If I may, Your Worship, I think right now we do have a consultant sort of coming up with a guideline. I think that was part of Jason Rayner's work, the previous person, but I don't know that we have the answer to that question today. I don't know if Director Slama or Director Culver would want to answer that, but I'm not sure we do. That is again why we put in as a sort of stepped approach would be this is about the amount we think we need if based on this sort of scenario, and allow us to go back and do some more review and more assessment to understand how we might do this. So, or how we might action the whole program itself. So, I don't think we have an answer to that question, but I'll look at Director Culver and Director Slama for that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, through you, Mayor. I'm curious about the question. The question was, could we hire a consultant to? I'm not sure I understand.
Well, I think as I understood it, the inventory, the deciding around which trees are, are best suited to our area, sort of the forest management plan part of it. Yeah.
Right.
Is that right? Sorry.
Thank you, Mayor Hamlin. I do think Director Culver tried to connect and answer that within his previous question in terms of what I was asking was, I thought the gap was the consulting work, but it wasn't. Either I misread it or whatever, but that the consulting work is ongoing, and the CAO has already said that some of these considerations will go through that before we get. So what we're deciding now is how we're going to finish the last half of the year out after that consulting comes back.
Yes, CEO Skinner.
Thank you, Your Worship. And also just to put a finer point on my interpretation of Councillor Jeffrey's comments and the work. We have a consultant on board right now. That consultant is very skilled, and they're looking at things that not only include trees, but also some relatively complex bylaws that Council indicated they were interested in. Things like what should happen when a Planning Act proposal is approved for like a large development site. Should there be site alteration bylaws that should be in place for all people who are cutting trees in Collingwood? And big questions like, do we need to regulate trees on private property as well as development property as well as town property? So those are sort of big, complex questions. And we have a consultant doing that, and I think that's fantastic, and you'll get that report back. On the arborist side, there's 4 or 5 or 6 different levels of arborist, and you can go online and look at the Arborist Association. The lowest really is someone who has experience cutting trees and significant experience. Some of the highest involve, I'm going out of memory here, but a college or technical degree as well as experience. And what we were trying to do in hiring an arborist was to have someone who could both reply on a policy basis to council, but could also put that darn chainsaw on, get in the bucket truck with their aide, and go out, and the time that they're not writing and reading things for council and for our plan, to actually cut trees and to cut down that list, to manage contracts and be a good contract administrator. So in suggesting that council get that person, we're looking for someone who's boots on the ground, but can also write you a report. So it's really splitting that middle area. And that's the piece that we were looking to pick up after the consulting assignment was done at mid-year, should you approve this proposal. And we would look at the items that you've suggested, such as using in-house staff for some of the work, if not all of the work, when we come back with that report prior to the expenditure.
Okay, I hear you. There, by then the union negotiations could have been had, and we can see if the existing person could be used. Is that what you're saying?
We would certainly endeavor, Your Worship, to start those conversations, and then the pace might depend on both parties, but we would certainly start. Thank you.
Okay. I wanted to offer up, I always am mentioning health and safety here, and I just want to share my own personal experience of having a home in the older part of Toronto quite a few years ago, and the trees in that area were getting to 100 years old, and they were just the root system. It dies underground, and you don't know when the tree's going to fall over. And we, in fact, had one fall over on our property, and no one was hurt, and it was a miracle. That's all I'll say, because it was a miracle. So when I walk around our town, and there's 2 trees on public lands, as far as I can see, right beside, that are at least 4 or 5 stories high in height, so 40 or 50 feet high, beside the French immersion public school. And every time I walk by there, my heart's in my throat, because I'm just thinking this. So I'm just so mindful, as you can't tell when a tree is coming down, and it can be dead. It can have leaves on it and still be coming down. And so from my perspective, I really would like to see us get that person out there. If we have 150 trees, that's 150 trees too many to have on a list that have to come down. I think that we have waited too long to get somebody in there to do this. The only option I see, if we don't want to hire someone, is there a contractor out there who we can, bring on? And if it's $300,000 this year, he's caught up, and then it's just 20 trees a year after that. Is that a possible scenario, Director Culver?
Thank you, Mayor Hamlin. It's hard for me to come to a very simple answer on that. My instincts in answering, and I will say they're only my instincts, is that contracted services, when it comes to an asset like this, it's often more expensive on a per project basis. There's the other thing is the idea of catching up is a bit difficult for me to sort of validate, and the reason why is because trees are a living asset, and they're a commodity that moves through time. And for example, right now we're dealing with an emerald ash borer concern that is a growing problem as more and more of the ash trees not only die, because a lot are dead, but become that so critically impaired that they may become a risk. That program was fathomed some years ago, and Councillor Pott alluded to that with respect to Public Works addressing and bringing on the project to try and figure out how to begin the process of addressing that massive undertaking called the Emerald Ash Borer. And now we're in the midst of it, and I can't tell you how big that program's going to get or how far it's going to need to go. So I'm a little hard pressed to say we can hire a contractor to sort of catch us up. And if we did, I would suggest that it's a more expensive proposition on a, let's just say, per tree basis or a per project basis than if we were able to consistently apply internal resources.
Thank you. Councillor Doherty?
Thank you. From what I'm hearing, I believe that this is actually a prudent investment, even if we consider only from a municipal liability standpoint. As we have all discussed, it's very obvious to all of us when a tree is dead, and we can send someone out, whether they're a skilled arborist or just skilled with a chainsaw, to address that tree. But to have a full-time arborist, or one that we would hire in May of this year, they would have, according to this report, the ability to assess trees that we cannot see as being a danger or an imminent danger. So to me, at $140,000, that is a very good management of our municipal liabilities. But then when we consider the added value that this position would offer in terms of assistance in developing some of our going forward policies on private and development related canopy maintenance, on our climate change initiatives, on our GIS updates, which I assume would be related to asset management and urban canopy as asset. I see this as being a good and prudent investment for the municipality. And if I'm understanding right, we are still either way going to have to invest in some 100,000 in contract removal of trees that are known to be a hazard. So the difference of 40,000 for I won't say peace of mind, but for an abundance of caution, let's say, is municipal funds well invested, in my view.
Thank you. Councillor Baines?
Thank you, Your Worship. I think what Dean Culver is talking about is I hate to use $10 words, a paradigm shift for the town, moving from reactive to proactive for how our tree canopy will end up. The reactive, of course, is taking care of all the health and safety issues we have with all the trees, but the proactive is really the vision of what we could be in the future, which I think fits in a lot of the spirit that's happening now. Far be it from us to be called a second garden city, such as the wonderful city of London is, but I don't think you get to be proactive, as the concept is being well described here, without hiring the appropriate individual or individuals to lead this. I think I differ with my friend here, Councillor Potts, but that's my opinion, and I would support this as long as it's starting around the 1st of May or that time period. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Potts?
Thanks, Mayor Hamlin. There's at no time am I against the fact of the tree canopy and the maintenance and being proactive and moving forward. Where I have a difficulty in this is in 2016, was the management hired a staff member who was your boots on the ground, chainsaw in hand, in the bucket truck, arborist who wrote reports on behalf of the town of Collingwood in the past, who went out and did tree assessments, who was on payroll, and at times of the year when there was availability, you could use them in a winter operations role that assisted in those pressures, and for years and years, as far as I can remember, we were always proactive, and it bugs me to think that, we talk about going from reactive to proactive. I think that, the town and the Works Department has done a phenomenal, magnificent job for many years on maintaining our tree inventory and whatnot. And moving forward, we have the staff in place. And if it comes that there's a list and there's things behind, obviously the ball's been dropped somewhere, and we need to utilize what we have. And I will maintain that, I'm not in support of moving forward and hiring a position. I'm in support of using what we have. Those are my comments.
Okay, thank you. And I'm going to ask you the same question. And how do we make up the job that the person's doing now if they become a full-time arborist? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Through you and to your response, I mean, we did it for, I guess, a number of years. You look at the department as a whole, a lot of services have been contracted out. I'm sure there's some wiggle room somewhere with 20, 21 full-time staff. There's got to be some wiggle room to be able to do some movement. For 7-8 months of the year, potentially through the unions, if there can be a letter of understanding that, allows this individual to do arborist work, that's a start. That's working. We're maybe not getting 12 months a year, but we're getting 6-7 months a year, which is a huge start, which we can potentially work towards, a goal. Can we control if a tree is going to fall down? Absolutely not. I mean, you take it day by day. We get to work. We work on getting the trees down that we have. If we have to bring in some outside services to assist and help, that's where our staff member came from. He was an outside contractor that was fully qualified and brought in-house. So I think that there is some movement internally there that we can adjust. Thanks.
Okay, any other comments on this topic? Councillor Ring?
Question through you, I guess, to Director Slammer or Corville. We're talking about here, and I keep hearing about the list of trees, and I know there's a lot of trees that probably have to be taken care of. We hire one person; he's not going to be working by himself, anyways. He's not going to be going and cutting trees down by himself. So he's going to have town staff support, I would imagine. So like we're pulling people off the job to look after it now. So what difference would it make by hiring just one person? Or for the inventory and stuff like that, that we want them for? Do we really want somebody to, as you said, grab the chainsaw, jump in a bucket truck and start cutting down trees? He's not going to do it by himself. So
how is the full complement of staff? How would that be handled?
Thank you, Chair. Through you to Councillor Ring. So, just correct. In the options that that are provided and shortlisted in the report here for Council's consideration, right? The option A with hiring the full-time arborist, we did indicate that they would work with staff from Parks and or Public Works for some of that hands-on work component, and where the position would really extend beyond what has been done in the past is in that in those elements of planning, and we provided quite a few suggested tasks, right? So whether that's, incorporating development and capital project review, which has not been done in the past, managing the contracted services, GIS kind of things, developing standard operating procedures, dealing with the Emerald Ash borer. So those are some of the areas where the work would be expanded upon what has been done in the past. Also in the past, the position was, there was some qualifications in a position in the Public Works team. So, work was done in the summer, and then that position was part of the winter control team in the winter. So again, looking at this full-time arborist position, we wouldn't have, as Mayor Hamlin indicated, right? We wouldn't have that person to complement the winter control team. We would be looking for that arborist to be doing some work, and winter is a good time, right, to be addressing trees, right, because there's a period of time where trees can't be taken down. So we believe that there is work, and good work could be done all year round with these roles, and fit that in with the teams in Parks and or Public Works. But then another option presented to council was, having contracted services do the work and not having the full-time position.
Thank you. Is there any follow-up, Councillor Ring?
no, not this time.
Okay, Councillor Perry.
Thank you, Mayor Hamlin. I see in the budget there's materials and equipment for 130,000 net change from prior year, 50,000. I'm not sure on the date, but maybe Councillor Potts or one of the other directors. Was there not equipment purchased 2016-ish, 2017? I'm not too sure on the date. Arborist equipment, and if there was, is it being utilized now? I'm
Director
not
Slama,
sure
is that
who
something
could.
you know the answer to?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to Councillor Perry. So Public Works does have some equipment in the sense that where they have chainsaws and some of the ropes and some of the equipment that's needed.
Bucket truck, anything like that? Sorry.
So what was included in this budget proposal was, a greater complement of that equipment, and the vehicle, which was one element that was removed, I believe, in this version of the budget. So the bucket truck. So we would still be, to do a lot of the work, we do still need to rent the proper bucket truck to complete the work.
Okay, thank you.
Or retain a contracted services who has that equipment.
Thank you.
Councillor Jeffrey.
So thank you, Mayor Hamlin. So when I look at the wording of the end further, that prior to the hiring of the arborist for the urban forestry unit, that a staff report detailing the overall urban forestry operations plan come forward to council for final endorsement. I think I would prefer a more specific wording that this is specific. If we did vote to do it, it would be specifically a placeholder pending the receipt of the consultant's report, but just not by just not by receiving that report do we endorse going ahead with the position. But the money has to be there in case you do decide. But I would like it further clarified within that motion that it's not a given just because you bring a report that you're going to be able to go out and hire an arborist.
I hear you. Yes, CO Skinner.
Thank you. Just a little detail for Councillor Jeffrey via you. There is a consultant's report, but we were thinking there would also be a staff report about how to approach this and the conversations with the union, et cetera. So there's two reports at play, just to be clear.
Okay.
And so if I can just work with you then, Councillor Jeffrey, for a moment. I think we're talking about the third paragraph in that resolution.
Correct.
So the words now say, let's see what we can figure out here. And further, that prior to the hiring of the arborist for the urban forestry unit, that a staff report detailing the overall urban forestry operations plan and staffing complement and costs, how's that, costs, come forward to council for approval. That good words? Would you like to move that?
Sure.
Okay, we have a mover, a seconder, Councillor Doherty. Any other discussion on this? All those in favor? And those opposed? Deputy Mayor's opposed. That means it's passed. Thank you. Okay, it's 5:15, but I think we should we keep on this? Yeah, I think we should keep on this because we have to get our budget dealt with. So I'm sorry to those who are in the meeting area that we are still continuing on our 2:00 meeting, dealing with our budget, and we will move to the next meeting when we're able. Okay, who's got something else they want to say about the budget? Councillor Jeffrey.
Mayor Hamlin, I'm just wondering if we could have an update from the treasurer as to where we're at with the votes as they've occurred.
Thank you.
To this time.
Yeah.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you to members of council. So let me just go back here. The only change since the last discussion we had is the transit position moving from 90,000 to 45,000. So we're now at, let me just do a quick math here, 55. We're now at about 200,000, which is a half 0.533 of a percentage tax point. So depending on whether we're looking at option A or option B, the 3.86 of option B would be down to 3.36, and then the 3.26 of option A would be down to 2.73.
Okay, thank you. Yes?
And we don't have an option on the floor now, am I correct? Because you had originally...
No, we
okay.
don't.
I'd like to propose option A as described by the treasurer at 2.73, which recognizing that for 1 year we are vacating our typical treatment of the reserves, and that we would be moving the up to 225 from last year's surplus to this year's.
Would there be a seconder for that, Deputy Mayor, or you want to speak to something first? Thank you.
I was just going to ask a point of clarification. The second part of the motion says, and that staff be directed to move forward with 2023 budget using the alternate option. So
I'm proposing option A.
So I'm just clarifying that that is basically on the table.
I think it's on.
Yeah, so I think what that's a good point. Thank you. So what he's saying is that the motion that's been read in, the second paragraph, is that it currently says that the alternative option as presented in the staff report be adopted in an effort to continue to lessen the asset management plan funding gap. Okay, so what you're, yeah, go ahead.
May I simply amend to alternative option A, that A be inserted in after alternative option A?
Okay, and then there would be a period after the word staff report, because we would not be continuing to lessen the asset management plan funding gap.
Right.
Okay, got it.
Second?
We have a seconder. That's our deputy mayor. Any comments? Councillor Doherty.
Thank you, Your Worship. I appreciate very much the Treasurer's direction to us to consider not straying from our asset management plan, and more specifically our procedure for dealing with surpluses on a year-to-year basis. I completely appreciate that, but for two reasons, I do support option A. The first one is because this is an exceptional year, and we're trying to find ways in which we can ease the pain of a highly inflationary budget. And the second reason is, and I spoke of this briefly at our last meeting, that we do have some $500,000 in debenture payments against the Black Ash Creek channelization project, which will be dropping off in 2024. That frees up $500,000 that could then be, and just for lack of a better way of putting it, we could double our commitment to our asset management plan in that year, and so make up for, in effect, what we're doing this year. So very supportive of option A. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Baines?
Thank you, Mayor. I will not support option A, but will support option B. Now, do I need to address then where the potential surplus, if any, may be applied to? Because I would, again, like that to go back to the AMP. So,
Well, I think that would be a question for the treasurer. So could you just address that, please? If we were to go with option B and the surplus follows the policy that has been set up for some years with council, how would that be dealt with if there's a surplus?
Thank you, Your Worship. So, and through you to Councillor Baines, at this point, the way the surplus allocation policy works is the funds are first put towards the working capital reserve, and then it goes down that, and then to operating capital contingency, and then the third, or I think it may be the fifth area is the asset management plan. I will share that the working capital reserve, for example, last year was topped up significantly, as were the operating and the capital contingency. We were able to bring them very close to their, or if not, in fact, and I'm sorry, I don't know the numbers right off the top of my head, but very close to their target balances. So I suspect that a large majority of the 200 odd thousand that we expect for the annual surplus this year will end up in the asset management plan.
I would be in support of that as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor?
Actually, Mayor Hamlin, the question was the same. I wanted to have explanation of I am interested that we're at the maximum on some of our reserves, so I'm going to be considering that as well going forward, but that was good information to have.
Thank you. Any other comments? Well, yeah, I'll just say, I do worry about our asset management plan because it is one of the things the province has directed everyone to prepare, which our staff has done, and now we have to fund it. And we are short in our funding by $500,000 a year, which is a significant amount. So I sort of feel if we are in the lucky position to have a surplus, that we should be using it for our asset management plan. because, we're only going to get more and more into the hole. And these are all big ticket items. And if we don't have the funds set aside to repave a road or fix up a bridge or replace a sewer or whatever these funds go to, it's not a favor we're doing ourselves or the taxpayers or the future taxpayers. Yeah, that's really, if I had to put my worry hat on, it's that one. Thank you, Treasurer Quinlan.
If I can just add to that, through you, Your Worship, and I'll make my final plea. But I think if we look at the past and we say, what has the tax rate done? What have we changed? And we've had this discussion that in fact it's gone down by 2.17%. And when we really understand what inflation has done in those years, we're talking about over 20% change in just general inflation rates, and with a negative impact in terms of our actual tax rate. So in some ways, it's just kicking the can down the road. So we just keep kicking the can down the road. The problems don't go away; they loom, and we need to have the ability to address them at some point. I think on top of that, not just general inflation, but when we talk about the building construction price index, that in of itself, just in the last year, has gone up by 15.6%, which means that capital projects get more and more expensive. And the more we delay them means we're kicking the can down the road. So I understand, and I can wholly appreciate the fact that, the pressures that are being impacted on us are also being impacted on our residents in many different areas. I shop at the grocery stores. I get gas as well. And I feel it and I understand it. I guess when I look at the amount that we're talking about, the difference between option A and option B, moving and on top of that, these numbers would be even more so. We've taken out another couple $100,000 of the budget. You're talking about $1 a month. That's less than a cup of coffee. And when you think about the impact that has on a resident, I can say that, they're likely, I understand nobody really wants to pay taxes. We know that, but taxes are a way for us to do great things together. That's the whole point of the Municipal Act. That's the whole point of collecting taxation. And although I understand that it's a difficult year, I just feel like these small changes help a long way in the future. And I wish what we could show you today is what the impact of changing this year will have on 2024 and 2025 and 2026, because we'll just be pushing those things down the road, right? So it means that we're looking at increases in those years, albeit some of the services that you're looking at today, where we're saying, we're not sure on the urban forestry unit, and we're going to relook at that and understand it. That's separate to me and a little bit different from the actual capital projects or the asset management that we're doing. We really it will make a huge impact in the future years if we don't start to look at it today. So I just wanted to, council can do as they wish, and of course that I totally appreciate it, and we will walk away with what you ask us to do. I just really, really want to impress on you what it means over the next 3 years. This first year is tough, and I get it, but it goes further and further and further.
And I also just wanted to clarify that what you have said, if we go with the option B, which allows our surplus to go to the asset management plan, that the increase is 3.36%. Is that right?
So the increase, pardon me, through you, Your Worship, the increase that we had proposed was 3.86, but once we drop off the 0.5 that we've eliminated this evening, yes, it would be at 3.3%.
3.3%. Okay. And okay, so from my own perspective, and I'll come to you in a sec, from my own perspective, given, the last 4 years, we've actually had a tax decrease, and we're in a year with a 7% inflation rate. If we come in at a 3.3% tax increase, well, I sort of feel good about that, to tell the truth. Deputy Mayor, over to you.
Thank you, Mayor Hamlin. And I just want to, I am still supportive of option A. I just wish we'd had the treasurer's passion here in 2019 about the asset management plan. I think that's when some things went off the rail. That's just my comments.
Why didn't you come and work with us earlier? This is your fault, clearly. Oh, Councillor Ring, did you have something else you wanted to add?
I was just going to ask why both options were put there, if or is that just?
I think there's two options because option B is the one I had brought forward at the beginning of last meeting, and then Councillor Jeffrey brought forward the next option.
Sorry.
Yeah,
Okay.
so that's why there's two. Yeah. Okay, so was there any more comments on this? No? Okay. So Councillor Jeffrey's motion is to go with option A. A. Okay, thank you. I'm getting
Amendment to what's currently there.
yeah. A, so it would read that we move forward with the 23 budget using the alternative option as presented in the staff report. And then the remainder part of that sentence is deleted. Okay, all those in favor? And those opposed? The capital asset management people are opposed. Okay, so that's all for today. Is there anything else before we leave, is there anything else on the budget that anyone wishes to raise at this time? Councillor Jeffrey.
I think we just need to vote on the first piece to receive. I believe we've voted, and then we have to vote on as amended.
Okay, thank you. So the first part of that motion, that's part of item 4.1, and I had read that out earlier. This is to have the 2023 budget draft number 4 be received. All those in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you. And then, okay. And then the other items, do I have to read it out again? No, so I'm not going to read it out again. We're hoping you have a good memory. So it's all those items we've discussed and voted on as amended. All those in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you. Item number 5 is public delegations, and we did move that up at the beginning of the meeting. But just in case there's anybody who didn't catch that, I just want to make sure we pick them up at this stage. Would there be anyone in the audience who wanted to speak to council about the budget? No. Anyone online? Clerk Amos.
Thank you, Your Worship. We do have some individuals. If you wish to address the standing committee regarding the budget, please press the raise your hand feature at the bottom of your screen. And there's no interest at this time.
Okay, then we'll have a motion to adjourn, please. Oh, Councillor Potts wants to do it. Okay.
I'll give it to him.
Okay, all those in favor? Unanimous.
Got to train some other people how to adjourn the meeting.